dark in the foreground here, very dark. Not sure if that's going to work. I'm in the Free State in central South Africa. I'm actually in an area very close to where Donnie Krichel, who was hired by the McCanns, lives and is sort of based. Donnie Krichel was the guy who did the DNA search using Madeleine's hair from her hairbrush. She's been in some of the he's been in some of the documentaries. I'm just trying to see if I can get the light so that it's not quite so dark on me. Is that a little bit better? It's kind of a tricky thing because you either see me or you see the background. How's that? It is going to get darker gradually behind me, but it's a little bit unfortunate. By the way, there's Timmy, if you can see him. I'm just a little bit scared he's going to jump off the edge of this balcony, but so far so good. Hello, Courtney, Rob from Kansas City. It's always a bit tricky when you're in a different location, because, I mean, for example, here, I don't know what the dog scenario is like, and there are quite a lot of dogs out here. So if you hear Timmy barking now and then, that's just par for the course, right? Hi, Steph, good to see you. So in today's live stream on the 14th anniversary of Madeleine McCann's disappearance, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the specific things. We're going to be practical about where she went, in terms of what was the abduction route, when did all of this happen, and to some extent how. One thing I'm not going to be talking about is who. I'm not going to be mentioning names as far as possible. It's more going to be about the logistics. What happened? When did it happen? Where did it sort of play off? And we see how that goes. I'm also not going to go into the why. I'm not going to talk about who or why. Okay, so that's really what we're going to concentrate on in this episode. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've written 5 books on the Madeleine McCann case, the Doubt trilogy, and then I wrote Deep into Darkness and Deeper into Darkness. I did start writing a final book in the Deeper into Darkness trilogy called Beach of Light. It was dealing with the Bruckner saga, but it just went on for so long that I eventually got quite bored with it, the whole Bruckner saga. I've kind of been waiting for it to just play out. Nicole, hi everyone. Finished work early, so happy to be here. Nicole, are you in the United Kingdom? Can you guys see me okay, or do I need to turn some lights on or something? Joanna, hello from London. Hi, Joanna. So hopefully it's going to get darker and then I'm going to become lighter. So that's kind of how it's going to play out. Let's just see if I can. So sorry about it being not quite ideal for now. Oh, UK calling. Okay. Debbie McClellan, good to see you here as well. Cecilia Buguis, how do you pronounce your name? Hello from Miami, Florida. Debbie's from Glasgow. By the way, here is Timmy. Hey, Timmy. He was kind of absent during yesterday's live when we spoke about the Everest disaster. So just to give you guys some background, I've written 5 books. The last book I wrote was based on me actually going to Praia de Luz in May 2019. I spent 2 weeks there. I kind of reenacted what I thought happened on May 3rd. So 2 years ago, I was in Praia de Luz. I was at the apartment 5A at the time that I thought it happened, and I kind of did a little experiment, and I'm going to kind of take you through that. Again, where, when, and all that kind of thing. So I don't have everything in front of me. I don't have my notes in front of me. I don't have my book in front of me either. So a lot of it is just sort of going off my mind, right? The top, just the memories I have. So some of it may not be 100% accurate, but you are going to get quite a good idea of what you're talking about. Do you think Timmy's safe running along this balcony? Do you think he's safe there? Well, so far so good. There's a balcony where I stay, so hopefully he'll be all right. Mojo Jojo, hi from England. Camille Cocagna, I'm having neck withdrawal. Oh my God, Timmy. Okay. Shall we get started, or should I wait a little bit longer? I see there are 46 watching at the moment. Olivia, I'm in the Free State. I'm in a town called Bloemfontein. It's in the middle of the Free State. It's quite a it's the judicial capital of South Africa. Let's get started. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so when I did the reenactment or retracing the abductor route, I left my hotel and I walked to the Ocean Club. I was armed, if that's the word. I was carrying a Debbie McClellan, thank you very much. Means a lot to the people here in the UK. So I was wearing a heart rate monitor that was GPS enabled. So forget about the heart rate monitor section, but it was basically going to track my movements and it was going to measure them. So it was going to tell me exactly how far I was going, and it was also going to measure how long it was obviously going to take me. So I was going to time everything, and obviously I was doing this with a premeditated idea of where I needed to go, the sort of pace I needed to walk, and how long it was going to take. And so I just wanted to act it out myself and see if it was going to work. So I left my hotel at around about maybe 20 to 10, around about 20 to 10, maybe somewhere around there, on May the 3rd, 2019. And it may have been slightly earlier because I obviously needed some time to get from my hotel to the Ocean Club, and it's quite strenuous. There's a lot of ups and downs in that sort of terrain there. Jessica Lynn, I'm having major deja vu. This is live, right? Yes, this is live. Joanna, they are selling or abducting children for organs. Anyway, so you guys are welcome to ask questions. I'll try and follow what you're saying. So on my way to the Ocean Club, and I meant to get there, I think around about, I meant to be at the door of the Ocean Club at about 47 minutes past 9, as I recall. I could be off by a couple of minutes, but that was basically the plan. So in my mind, I kind of calculated that was when whoever was carrying Madeleine actually exited apartment 5A on May 3rd, 14 years ago. On my way, this is, I think, quite interesting. On my way to the apartment, I obviously walked past certain bars and pubs and restaurants and so on. And what I noticed was everyone was glued to the television. Everyone was watching football. And that, I think, is something that has been underestimated in a lot of the discussions about everything, is that, oh shit, my dog looks like he's running around down there. Sorry, my dog, I've just seen my dog out there. You guys are going to have to excuse me. I'm going to go and have to fetch Timmy. Just give me 2-3 minutes. I'll be back. Hold on. Well, sorry about that, guys. Just I'm staying in a guest house, and someone else stays here as well, and so Timmy's somehow run out the front door. So it's a little bit awkward. I'm out of breath. I can kind of see what's going on from here, but it's a bit odd. I didn't know that they would leave everything open downstairs. Jojo says, my son was 3 at the time. I held him tight that night. Matowick said, I knew the German suspect was a red herring. Lord Viper Scorpion, and he was never seen again. I can hear Timmy down there. I know this lady who's gone to fetch him. She's actually jogged with him a few times, so she knows him quite well. But I'm definitely a bit distracted and nervous. Anyway, let's keep going. So I do think the football narrative is something that people haven't spoken about, which is, if you think about how did this happen? How could Madeleine have been abducted and no one saw her? Well, because everyone's eyes were glued to the football. And you have a lot of tournaments going on, like UEFA, around this time of year. And we know that the Tapas 9 were quite a sporty group. They were all playing tennis. They were runners. And we also know that after Madeleine's disappearance, Madeleine's disappearance was heavily publicized in football stadiums and all that kind of thing. And by footballers wearing shirts with the face on it and all that kind of thing. So I do think it's interesting that So Dorte Bass says, I hope not you want us to believe in the abduction. So what if you just give me a chance to explain what I'm going to explain, I'm going to talk about how a little girl's body is taken from A to B, and whether you want to call that an abduction or a whatever you want to call it, that's what we're talking about. Okay. So that could also be a reason why the Tapas 9 wanted to make arrangements so that they could be in the Tapas restaurant so that they could watch football, so that they didn't need to walk a long way. Do you know what I mean? So that they could easily kind of go to the bar, sit in the bar, and sort of do all that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Kirsty McKenzie, you were here last night. Last night for me. I hope you enjoyed the Neverest thing. Jessica Lynn, has there been new information? Why the sudden rush of people speaking of this case again? Just because it's the anniversary. That's really the reason. Vanessa says you never leave children unattended. Well, it depends how old they are, but certainly at that age. So what I did the night before that I went to the Ocean Club, I just checked the time that the sun set. I was just curious, what time did the sun set? What time did it get dark in Prior Delusion? And what I noticed was, I think it was, and I took photos of this, at 20 to 10 in the evening, you had a situation where it was eventually pitch dark outside. So at about 20 minutes to 10, it was eventually the kind of darkness that would sustain itself through the whole night. And if you bear in mind the original version, the Tannerman story, and the original version that the authorities believed, it was that they thought that the abduction had happened earlier in the evening, so something like 9:20 or somewhere in the first half of the evening, right? So if we're talking about between 9 and 10, the original theory was that it happened somewhere like 20 past 9 or half past 9 or somewhere there, right? And what I can tell you is it's still quite light then. There's still quite a lot of light that you're going to be able to see someone's features. And if you were planning an abduction or if you wanted to get away with something, then it wasn't a good idea to do that. On the other hand, if you knew what you were going to do and you wanted to hide a body away, then it would make sense to wait until the moment of maximum darkness, the earliest moment of maximum darkness. And that, I thought, was after 20 to 10, but also you need to coordinate that time with the Smithman sighting. Everything I'm telling you is my theory, so I'm not saying what I'm saying is fact, and I'm not even saying it's necessarily provable. I'm just saying that a lot of the information we have, to some extent, support this version, and it's up to you to decide whether it makes sense or not. So I think I walked up to the apartment I arrived at the apartment door at about 47 minutes past 9. Interestingly, on my way there, I virtually didn't, there were no other pedestrians kind of walking around. Everyone seemed to be either at home, eating in the apartment or something. I think I've just seen Timmy come up. Glad he's okay. And then they were either in the apartments having dinner, or they were watching football. It was also quite chilly out. May is quite early. There he is. May is quite early in the season, so it's quite, you don't really want to be out. There's no reason really to be out. It's not pleasant to be out. It's sort of windy and cold and all that kind of thing. I was also looking out for the moon, if the moon was going to be a factor or something like that. What I then did was, anyway, what I forgot to mention is on my way to the apartment door, besides not seeing anyone else, I did see some people sitting in a car right opposite apartment 5A, and that person turned out to be Martin Brunt from Sky. So I thought it was quite strange that he was there, and I wondered what he was doing, but I didn't really have time to chat. I was on my mission, so I went to apartment 5A, stood in front of it, and then I started my watch at the time that I thought was the right time. Just Timmy back again. Timmy, you must not stop being naughty. There he is. Hey, you should actually get onto that sofa and just be calm. But I know there are a lot of dogs in the neighborhood, so he's quite excited. So the how should I turn this? Camille Cocagna, am I saying that right? Timmy, be good for your dad, yeah. Maybe I should hold him quickly. Okay, so then I started my watch, and I started walking along the route that I thought Madeleine was abducted. Right now, you can draw your own inferences from that. You can decide who you think abducted her. You can decide whether it was. You can put any person there, but it's basically who carried Madeleine from the apartment to where she was left, and I'm going to take you along that route. So Timmy knows Dad's busy and he's taking full advantage, that's for sure. Jessica says, did you do this around this time of year? I did this exactly 2 years ago today in Praia Deluge. So it's a little bit difficult to explain like this without showing you photos. That's the book Deep Into Darkness. That the chapters and the text hyperlink to photos that are and Instagram video clips and all that kind of thing. But basically, as soon as you leave the door of the Timmy, calm down. As soon as you leave the door of the apartment, there's kind of like a channel. There's a wall to your right, and then there's a little bit of a labyrinth of infrastructure of the Ocean Club apartment complex that you can either go under or you can go next to. what is quite interesting is you sunk quite low. You didn't really need to duck down. You sunk quite low in terms of the level of the car park next door and also the road going past the Ocean Club. That's another thing is I didn't notice any traffic. It wasn't like there weren't cars pulling up into the parking lot and there weren't cars driving by. Not at all. I then, so my route was the opposite to the Tannerman route. It was going to the, I think is it the east side? I'm just trying to think. The east side, the side where the sun would come up. Sorry, I'm just a little bit disorientated now. Basically, if you are standing with your back to the sea, looking at the Ocean Club, you're going that way, right? So I think that is the west, actually. Timmy, come. So I think that is the west side. And so what's already interesting with that scenario where you go up the steps is within a few meters, you at a different level to the level you were on. And that also makes it difficult just for line of sight. So now I'm on another level and now I'm heading to the driver's exit of the parking lot on the other side of the Ocean Club. You know, those two big blocks, you're on the other side. And so I went from there. And the other thing that's quite interesting is there's a line of trees. I think they're peppercorn trees. But today they've been thinned out somewhat. When this happened, those trees formed quite a interesting green barrier in terms of people in the apartments in the road opposite who might be on their balconies looking out. And that's another thing you realize when you're there is it's not something you can easily do without being seen. Your best way of doing this in an invisible way is the fact that it's nighttime, the fact that you're moving quite quickly, and the fact that Praia de Luz is fairly empty at that time of the year, if that makes sense. I was really surprised that you could walk down entire sections and there was just no one there, right? And I think it's completely the opposite maybe a month or two later where it's just packed and you know there are lots of people. Can you guys see me okay? Shelley Jake says, I doubt the German suspect is the killer. I agree with you there. Kay Leff, or the parent overdosed her with Benadryl and had to get rid of the body. That's what Kay Leff says. Jessica Lynn, we see you. Okay, so from there I then turned left, and there the road actually drops down quite sharply. And so to get to from where I was at apartment 5A to the corner of that same road, it's quite uphill. And if you actually stand on the road itself, there's a kink that both goes up and turns slightly. And that's something you realize when you on the ground in Praia de Luz is that the landscape's very, there are not very many long straight lines, if I can put it that way. All the roads turn and they don't. The other thing is the relief is such that it goes up and down at regular intervals. So you have a situation where there are no long straight lines, and that's very good for someone who's trying to not be in sight, for someone who wants to not be seen, or if you do see him, you're only going to catch a quick glimpse, right? And so I believe the person carrying Madeleine then went in kind of a dog's leg, a kind of a zigzag, quite close to the tennis courts that are in that area, and then heading down again a very steep downhill to basically the Smith sighting. Now, I'd like to give you guys the street names and the street grid, but this format just doesn't work for that. Again, I've done all of that in my book, Deeper into Darkness. I've provided the exact locations for where you see what. Now, I think it was at this point that I probably saw the first person So when I was walking, I wasn't running and I wasn't walking slowly. I was striding kind of at a rapid pace, but given that the road slopes so steeply, it's quite hard not to walk quickly. And so it was at this point that a guy, I think, was going through the garbage. I think he actually had a dog with him and he was going through the garbage. And what I was just thinking about in a basic way, I was thinking, can I walk from apartment 5A along this route that I believe is the abductor route to where I think Madeleine's body was disposed of temporarily? Can I get there without being seen? Is it possible to do it recreating everything, that the time, the route, is it possible to get there without being seen? And you could say that, well, this beggar saw me, but he didn't seem to look up. You could laugh at that and say, that's silly. But, if let's say I was the abductor and they had interviewed him and said, did you see anybody? I don't know whether he would have been able to describe me or anything, because I looked at him. I don't remember him looking at me. I think he felt quite embarrassed that he was going through the garbage. Anyway, I then went down. Basically, from there you go down to the Smith siding. There's not that much of a scenario where someone can be looking at you from the balcony, because all of the hotels from that point onwards are sort of oriented towards the ocean, or they sort of have their backs to you. And what's quite interesting at that particular point is there's a large area of unused terrain. So that was the case in 2019. It was also the case in 2007, right? This very big piece, probably easily the size of a rugby field, maybe slightly smaller, but quite a large area that's just, there's nothing there. And because of that nothing being there, it's relatively quiet in terms of traffic and in terms of pedestrians. It's a relatively quiet part of Praia da Luz compared to if you'd gone in the other direction, the Tannerman direction, which is the direction that it seemed the folks that were the witnesses were pointing the authorities to. So the next thing that was really interesting was going through the Smithman sighting corridor. Now, what's interesting there is you kind of, once you reach a certain point in that road, you can't go anywhere else. It's sort of almost like a hole, like an urban hole in the fabric. You can't go anywhere else. If you want to go further down, you've got to go through there. And it's a very narrow section. And I think it's also a one-way road, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but it's just very narrow. And that is where the Smith family, quite a few individuals standing, or walking at different spaces between one another, saw an individual walking down, carrying a little girl. The little girl, they said, looked like she was about 4 years old. Madeleine was a few days shy of her 4th birthday. The girl had blonde hair. She appeared to be sleeping. The man appeared to be carrying her slightly awkwardly. I don't know if you know this, but they actually greeted this man and he didn't greet them back. And there's more to say about the sighting. You can go and read up on it if you like, but it's certainly Martin Smith. That is his opinion on who he thought he saw. As I say, this episode's not about who, it's about where and when and how. So the thing that's quite frustrating with the Smith sighting is the time of it. The detective Amaral, I think, puts it between 10 to 10 and about 10 o'clock at night. I made my own calculations, but it does appear that they paid a receipt. The Smith family paid a receipt at, I think, Kelly's Bar, and that is, I think, time stamped. So it gives you a reasonable idea what time the Smith sighting is likely to have happened. But the point is, it's much closer to 10 o'clock. So it's very interesting that the Tapas 9 would steer the investigation to the Tanner sighting that was early in the evening, and then you had this other sighting later in the evening. So the Tanner sighting was supposed to happen at between 9:15 and so 9:30, whereas the Smith sighting happened at around about 10 o'clock. You could say a little bit before or a little bit after, but basically at that later time. I'm a little bit fuzzy on whether I saw someone when I went through there. As far as I remember, bear in mind I did this reenactment quite a few times. Sometimes I did it in the day. I don't seem to recall bumping into anyone when I went through there. And then I immediately turned right, and then the road again tilts up quite steeply. And by the way, the Smith family, the reason that they were walking the way they were walking is immediately after that area, that corridor, there's another road going to the left, to the west, or is it the east? Yeah, I think it's the west. I'm just so sort of confused. I'm not looking at a map, but anyway, to the side away from the Roja Negra, there's a big hotel complex there, and that was where they were going. And just because I think some of the Smith family were flying back to Ireland, and so that's why they were kind of having kind of an early night. For some of them, it was the end of their holiday. For the McCanns and the Tapas 7, I think they were going to be in. I don't know if you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Were they going to be in Portugal another 1 day or 2 days, something like that? But they were also coming to the end of their holiday. But the point is that they had become quite familiar with their surroundings. They'd become familiar with jogging routes, the layout and all that kind of thing. And obviously it took me a few days when I was there. In the beginning, I really didn't know really what was going on. And then it takes a little while, and then you do figure out the place. It's quite a complicated place for it being relatively small. Chef Betsy, thanks very much. Chef Betsy asks, you have put forth many possible, if not probable, leads. I don't know if you can answer this outright, but have authorities followed up with them? I don't think the authorities have paid too much attention to my theories and then done anything with them, if you want to put it that way. I did want to make contact with Detective Amaral when I was there. I actually did contact him via email, and he seemed annoyed. So I didn't really push my luck. I did go to the place where he was staying, I think Portimao. I don't mean to his house, just to the town. And I was I wanted to share some of my thoughts with him and just have a conversation, but I kind of get the idea that perhaps he gets that a lot. But I was a bit stung that he responded to my email with kind of such irritation, but you know, I did make an attempt at least. So Jan says they were leaving Portugal Saturday. It looked chilly there at the time. Okay, so I then turned to the right, and the road then tilts upward quite steeply. And what happened then was one vehicle passed me at that point. I think I seem to remember it being a kind of a black Mercedes, but I just remember it being a dark vehicle with a driver in it, and that guy I saw, and I think he may have seen me. So that was essentially the only person that I really saw going down, right? And then a few paces later, I turned off and I headed down again, a very, very steep downhill section. And I don't have the exact measurements with me, but I seem to remember it took me from the door of the Ocean Club apartment 5A to, now bear in mind I'm talking about the door of apartment 5A, not the window. It took me, I think it was 6 or 7 minutes, and it was around about 600 or 700 meters, right? So I then stopped my watch and I took a photo there, I think, with my cell phone. And that is where I believe Madeleine McCann's body was temporarily left, in a stormwater drain pipe, which is right beside a park bench that's there. So it's also right off the jogging route. So if you would go jogging, you would probably have taken a very similar route from apartment 5A. It's virtually, the route I've just explained to you is virtually I'm not saying it is the most direct route to the coastline on that side of the resort, but it is practically the most direct route. I think there's another route, if you went past Kelly's Bar, that might be slightly more direct. There's another route also going along the hotel, but they are more sort of on the route of pedestrian traffic and car traffic. So if you wanted to miss all of that, and joggers often do, they do want to miss car traffic and foot traffic, because anyway, that might be a route that they would take. There's also the beginning of a dog walkers route, as far as I remember. And so that was where I thought Madeleine was temporarily stored, in a drain pipe. And there's right by that drain pipe is a lot of reeds growing quite over all the years that I've looked at that particular spot. Those reeds have always been there. Those reeds have been growing in the stormwater drain water, and also growing in the there's some effluent that comes out of there as well. So it's kind of quite a tangle of wild plants, but that provides shielding from the restaurant that is opposite the church. If you guys know the area, you know what I'm talking about. And so because of that, you have visual shielding, just putting a child's body into that pipe area. And then it was the thing of hitting my watch again, and now how fast can I get back to the hotel, right? Now, if you're thinking, well, with an abductor, some kind of strange abductor, would he or she go back to the hotel? I'll leave you to answer that question. The other thing that you might think is, am I going to go back the exact same route? In other words, am I going to go back the exact same route that I've come? Am I going to go back to exact same route, zigzagging along the tennis courts, along the back of the Ocean Club to 5A? Is that the route I'm going to take? Answer, no. As I say, I thought about this, and I was testing a theory. So the route that I took back, and this is something I don't believe anyone has really spoken about. You hear about, he's a Tanner man or Smithman, but you never hear this part, which is the route the abductor could have taken back, right? And the route that I thought was possible was from the drain pipe back to the Smithman sighting. Not necessarily, he might have taken a slightly different route along the coast, along the road that's there. But if I speak from my experience, I didn't see anyone during my walk down. So, you could, if you get into the mind of the abductor, he might not want to have gone through that same narrow corridor a second time, especially after that close call. On the other hand, you can see it from a distance. Anyway, it's difficult to explain it in detail what I'm talking about, but I do think that he would have basically gone back in the same direction to where the Smith sighting happened, and then from there deviate. And so, in other words, from there you would go in the direction of the Baptista supermarket, which is you're going laterally to the east, I believe, so you're not going so much up towards the hotel, you're going that way to the hotel, right? And this is the part that I think is really interesting is, and you don't see it so often in photos or video. It's, when they show photos of the hotel, you tend to see the same thing over and over again. What you don't tend to see is the back area of the hotel where the tennis courts are, that area. And that is where I believe the abductor, the person carrying Madeleine. So what I wanted to see is whether I could access the hotel from that area, and again, how long it would take me to get from that stormwater drain pipe to that area. And I think the answer was about 5 minutes. So it took me about 7 minutes from the door of the Ocean Club to the stormwater pipe, and just 5 minutes back to the Ocean Club, but another entrance. So all in all, I was missing for about 11 minutes. I was, in terms of the secret thing that I was doing, I was gone for about 11 minutes. It's quite a short time. And I don't think, I believe some of the people that have been investigating this just thought that it wasn't possible to do X, Y, and Z because there wasn't enough time. And I felt like, to some extent, I may have disproved that. That you didn't have to be running, you didn't have to be a champion runner either. You could move, if you knew the layout, you could move in quite a specific way and be back at the Ocean Club through that rear entrance where the tennis courts were within about 5 minutes. And what I think a lot of people don't know is there's a space between villas and there's a kind of a shopping center where the Baptista supermarket is. There's a car that goes between there that allows you to take a shortcut, and that's where your what do you call it, your so I just saw a question there, that would then take you right into the tapas bar as well. Someone says, did you happen to be carrying the weight of a child when you did this? Bear in mind, coming back, you wouldn't be carrying a child, and going there, you carrying someone but downhill. So no, I wasn't carrying the weight of a child. So when I got to the gate at the tennis courts, I stopped my watch to stop the time, but also to measure the distance, and also to look at the true time. So what time was it? What time was it on May 3rd? And I think that's quite interesting to look at. It was something like 10 o'clock or 10:01 when I stopped my watch. And so that is the where, essentially, of my story. Veronica Seddon, just looking through live chat, trying to catch up, agreed with your, okay, missed that one. So David Cohen says, and you really think they would find a child with over 400 people looking for her in a 3-mile every way? So I can't understand what you wrote there. Maybe just express it a little bit better. So anyway, that is where I believe Madeleine was left. And then I think she was moved from there to another location. That part is a harder mystery to solve. I did go, and that's a separate story as well. I did go and look at that side of Praia de Luge, and also look at the villa and the drain layout there. And then I think she was moved again. It's possible that she was moved several times. It doesn't need to be once or twice or three times. It could be innumerable times, but multiple times. And then I think she was finally disposed of. Now, one thing that I think is revealed, we're going to talk about when in a moment. One thing that I think is revealed by the Timmy. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. Yeah, look, I'm not sure if I'm going to go into that area. Let me go to the when. So when you talk about when, for me, a very significant thing is the cadaver traces that were found. Some people would say alleged cadaver traces were, I believe, very strong traces. So, and I believe that because the apartment was cleaned by cleaning staff just through the course of their events, through the course of their work. It was cleaned, and Timmy, come. Come. Okay, and so the cadaver odor would need about 2 hours to form, right? And so if you take the time of the abduction being, say, 10 to 10 roughly, right? If you say that is the time of the abduction, then the cadaver odor would need to have had at least 2 hours before that. So Madeleine's body would have needed to be in the apartment for at least 2 hours before that. So now we are going back to 10 to 8 roughly, right? 10 to 8. And then you've kind of got to wonder again, 2 hours is the minimum for cadaver odor. Wasn't the cadaver odor actually quite potent? Because some was also found in the there was an alert, I think a mild alert, in the flower bed below the apartment, in the flower bed. Now, we talk about where. This is, I think, another thing that isn't often discussed. So my theory about where Madeleine actually died is that Madeleine died from a fall, and she fell through that shrubbery of the balcony and landed on, there's like a section of paving. So obviously when I was in Praia de Luz, I specifically went and I looked through the shrubbery, because it is kind of not transparent. It's you can kind of see through it. And I looked at the inside of the garden of apartment 5A, and it's still quite similar to how it was in 2007. You see this, it's like almost like a pavement, but it's the flower, kind of the wall of the flower bed that is sort of running alongside the wall, sort of curves a little bit like this. And I believe that Madeleine, when she fell, her chest may have fallen partly on that surface. It may have, so in other words, she may have fallen on that sharpish protrusion of this kind of paving, right? And then I think she was possibly resuscitated. And it does appear from the cadaver traces, if that's what they were, that Madeleine's body was moved quite a few times inside apartment 5A. So possibly behind the couch, possibly inside the bedroom. So those are two places it was moved. And so if you agree with that, if you think that is possible, plausible, or likely, then why wouldn't her body also be moved after she was removed? In other words, if her body was moved inside the apartment, maybe this isn't a good place for her body. Well, what about there? Well, why wouldn't the same psychology hold for when her body was outside the apartment, right? I think I should take a few of your questions here and your comments. Let's have a look. If they were not doctors on vacation but had been two blue-collar parents, there may have been a very different course. Olivia asked, what year did you go to Portugal? I went in 2019, so I went 2 years ago. I think when I look at the photos of 2007 and now, there's a certain amount of change in the fabric, but not really a lot. It's not as though the places had a facelift at all. Of course, there were some things that were different at the time. There was some drainage drains were dug, so some of them were open at the time. And I know in subsequent investigations they went and looked inside the drains. Of course, it's a little bit late, 5 or 10 years later. But that I think is quite an important aspect. I believe that Madeleine's body was put inside a stormwater drain, and you can actually move quite a long way through that tunnel system. And I did. I did subsequently go into the drain and kind of see where it went. But you've got to be quite nimble. You've got to be quite, have strong nerves and be, you can't be too overweight, and you've got to be fit and fast moving and strong. Veronica said, did Maddie ever leave that apartment? Not quite sure what that means. Not quite sure what you're talking about there. Blue Sky says, I'm horrified that such small children were left alone in an open apartment. All the parents went out to dinner. Olivia Vaz says, okay, thanks a lot, Olivia. Good to see you here. I'm sorry that this background is not really up to snuff. Let me take myself out of it for a second. There you can see it a bit better. And here's Timmy. Yeah. Sorry, this whole lighting thing is kind of been quite distracting. I just thought it would be quite something different, different background to have for you guys. Veronica said, did the dogs pick any scent up? Yes, they picked up scent in the apartment, and they picked up a scent in the rental vehicle. Nicole asked, what do I make of the McCann's behavior in interviews? In this episode, I don't really want to talk about the who, but just in a general sense, and I'm now referring to what other journalists said and what the media was saying, is that the McCanns seemed to, I think there was a sense that Kate didn't seem to be grieving, and they were very organized with their public relations, and some people didn't like that. So that definitely was something. In almost all the videos I do of Madeleine McCann, or if I write a blog, then people tell me, so I'm an author, I've written 5 books on Madeleine McCann. People tell me I must go and watch Richard E. Hall, and I believe he has some theories about UFOs, and I think he has a belief that Madeleine died a week earlier. And I just think there's some people who, in true crime, who believe certain things, and then there's some people who don't. I think it's a similar crowd who you believe coronavirus is real, and other people just believe it's not real. You have the same thing with vaccines work, vaccines don't work. And I don't think you can really compete with that. You can't argue with someone who says, well, Madeleine died a week earlier, or Madeleine never existed. You know, I'm not quite sure why one's got to go to Richard E. Hall and go through that. One thing Richard E. Hall did do that I thought was quite good was his weather analysis, where he's looking at the weather. I thought that was quite useful, but because he basically proved that, or showed that the weather that they experienced was mostly not great. And I must say, when I was there, it was pretty good. And one thing I noticed just in terms of the weather was I caught a sunburn very early on. And if you look at the so-called last photo, I just think that all three people in that photo don't look like they've been in the sun yet. They haven't been on holiday yet. So I actually think the last photo was taken the day they arrived from the airport. And that is reinforced by the weather on that day. And so anyway, that's my theory, that the last photo was probably more likely the first photo. Someone else says you want to look at James Bogart's videos. So I'm someone who what should I watch someone else's videos and then, okay, wow, that's what happened. So I'm a creator in my own right, and I've written a couple of books on the case, and so that is my theory. So they can come and look at what I've said and decide what they think, but I'm certainly not going to defer to what they believe or whatever. I mean, I've sometimes stumbled on something that they've done that makes sense, but it certainly doesn't all make sense. And some people may say the same about some of my analysis. Something that I think was quite good from Richard E. Hall was his discussion with a someone who deals with speech, or can't quite think of what is it again, a guy dealing with not body language, is it body language, speech patterns or something like that. I thought that was fairly good, but that was something I looked at quite a long time ago. Peter Hyatt, yeah, that was fairly good. But Peter Hyatt can also be a bit hit and miss as far as I'm concerned. His theories on certain things I definitely disagree with. So it would be interesting to have someone like that on the same show, and where you can kind of talk about these things like that. Statement analysis, that's it. Sorry, I've had quite a few days with very little sleep and a lot of exertion over the last few days. Hidden confessions, yeah, that sort of thing. Do you guys have any... Oh, is it Richard D. Hall? Okay. Shows you how much I know about him. Have you ever tried to interview the interpreter, Robert Murat? That's actually quite a good point. That probably would have been a good guy to talk to. I did go and look at his house. I'm not sure if he's still there. But yeah, that is quite a good angle. To be honest, what I do look at is the interviews they have given. So you cross-reference several of their interviews with one another. And so Robert Murat gave quite a lot of interviews in the Netflix documentary, and What I found a little bit unfortunate was that he kind of blames the media. He sort of blames the media. Well, a bird has just flown out here. He blames the media for kind of going after him, and so I don't know if he would really appreciate me being, I guess, a media person, like knocking on his door kind of thing. Do I believe Maddie was taken by child traffickers? No. So I'm not sure if there's anything more I need to say. I've had a couple of thoughts, but I keep looking at your questions. So Chef Betsy says, my husband Larry and I are the parents of 5. I get physically ill. So now I've just lost that. Seems to be quite a few people watching now. So something else I can mention quickly is this whole idea that them having dinner was like having dinner in the back garden. When you're there, when you're actually in Praia de Luz and you stand kind of with your back to the garden of 5A, you see how far away the apartment is from the restaurant, and also, I mean, this is quite clear from a lot of the photographs. You can't actually see the door of apartment 5A. You can't see the door from the restaurant. So it's really not like having dinner in your garden. That's definitely not the case. Something else I wanted to test, but I wasn't able to, is I wanted to sort of stand at apartment 5A and see if I could hear, or how clearly I could hear, laughter and noise from the tapas restaurant. But the tapas restaurant was, for all intents and purposes, closed. I mean, it seemed dead. It seemed like nothing was happening there. Matt Black says, it is not British culture to leave young toddlers alone and go out to dine. No way. I've heard different stories about that. I've heard that some people say they would have done the same, and I've heard some people say they would never do that. I don't have children, but I do have a little dog, and I feel bad leaving him at home. Today I went to the gym and I had a swim, and I feel bad just leaving him that way. And I think children, it's definitely a responsibility. And that's not even in a strange place. Do people think Maddie died the day her picture was taken at the pool? No. People think that the last photo has been faked. Some people think the last photo has been faked. Nick Tatters, the weather reports for that night say that there was no wind, a still night. It was moderately warm also for that time of year. Okay, I'm not sure if there's much left to say. This hasn't been a live full of fireworks, just because it is one's got to be very careful talking about the McCann case. So that's what I've done in this particular episode. I don't know whether I'm going to do a who and why follow-up, just because it is a bit tricky. But what I do want to tell you is, if you're interested in the trip that I took to Praia de Luz in 2019, I wrote about it in Deeper Into Darkness. I wrote Deep Into Darkness. And then Deeper Into Darkness deals with these questions, but with photos and a lot more kind of concise information. What I've given you now is kind of an overview of that. It's been quite well reviewed and well received so far. And I will be narrating Doubt as an audiobook from now onwards. So for those interested, that'll be on Patreon, and the Neverest audiobook is also supposed to start from this point onwards. Because I've been off of YouTube for 2 or 3 weeks, I'm thinking of doing a little bit more lives than I normally do. So perhaps on a Saturday and a Sunday, so twice a week. And so the next one I'm going to be doing probably on Sunday will be a great analysis of the Chris Watts case by someone called Stephanie, who's a patron on Patreon. So I'll be doing that. I'll be reading through her theory on the Chris Watts case next week. So you guys should check that out. Let's just see if there are any other questions. I might just stay on for another 5 minutes or so. If you're wondering where Timmy is, he's just over there on the couch. Let's have a look. Robbie Robbins says, thank you. I'm also catching up and enjoying Everest. That's good. Jessica says, I know far too much about the Watts case. Yeah, there are some people that feel that way. What I want to do is just sort of take a break from it for a little while. And then when the anniversary comes up, so probably from next month, I might just start going slowly into some of it again. But I probably won't be covering it that much this month. Not at all, but not that much. Yvonne Phillips, do you want to talk about Kate's bruises? Not really. Peter Schorenberg, good to see you here. What's your opinion of the PJ investigation in the early days? It's quite an interesting question. I'm not quite sure what you mean if by early days, if you just mean the first year, but I thought the investigation in August and September was quite interesting. I got the feeling that they took their cue from the McCanns from the beginning. So if the McCanns said, well, this Robert Murat guy or someone in the top of 7, or if they said, like Jane Tanner said, you know what, I actually saw this guy with a face that looked like an egg, you should look into him. The police seem to just take their cues from them. And it took quite a long time for them to move away from that. One thing I think I did want to mention during this live stream, kind of in a general sense, is just to make the comment that over the years of the Madeleine McCann case, you've kind of had this contest between the credibility of the McCanns, who are doctors, and their friends, who are also, many of them are doctors. And so they are credible, and they're from Britain, and Britain's this respected European country, versus a policeman who is Portuguese or is from Portugal. And so you have this credibility thing that who is more credible, a policeman or a doctor, right? And that question has been taken to the European Court of Human Rights, essentially, and they, as far as we know, they are still about to rule on that. But if you had to ask anybody, who would you trust today, a doctor or a cop, who's on anything, on any matter, whether it's criminal, health, whatever, who would you tend to believe? People are talking about K2s being deadlier than Everest. Okay, So that's really where we are now. And now you have a situation where, I don't know if you've seen the latest reports on the Madeleine McCann case, is that the the funding may be ending, and that's been a constant theme, that every anniversary, are they going to renew funding for the search, right? I believe they're searching for someone who's died a long time ago, but the McCanns keep saying, well, there's always hope and we believe in miracles, kind of thing. And so you literally have a situation where even the British authorities at some point are probably going to say, we give up and we don't think Madeleine's alive, or we're not going to continue investigating. And so you're still going to have a situation of, or you might have the situation of the McCanns persisting regardless, and they've been talking about maintaining a, I don't know if it's private funding or a private investigation. I think it's private funding. But to what end? And I think the answer to that is the Nora Corrin case. Is if the investigation ends, well then you have an inquest, because you basically can't find a person who's missing, and so legally the status has then got to be ascertained, which means you have a separate investigation then. And where do you think an inquest is going to direct attention? Where do you think the inquest directed attention in the Nora Corrin case? And so for those interested, those in Britain who are interested, there is a bit of intertextuality, interrelationship between the Nora Corrin case, where a teenager disappeared in Malaysia, French-Irish, and it happened just a few months after the Netflix documentary came out on the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. And I believe the Corrin family were heavily influenced by the documentary, and that psychology of that series made them think, wow, Nora's disappeared, we're in a foreign country, maybe the window was open, she was abducted. And there was, again, no evidence, and the police disagreed with them. So I think it's quite an interesting case to compare. So I've also written a book on that. It's called All Who Wander, or Not All Who Wander Are Lost. And I think so far every review of that book has been a 5-star review. So you guys. Anna from Sweden asks, where am I? I'm in the Free State, a city called Bloemfontein. And the sun is just setting. Let's see if you can see it. It's quite a flattish area. And yeah, so I'm about to wrap up here. I've just been quite distracted by my dog running around and causing mischief. And it is a bit of an exposed location. I've been a little bit worried that he's going to run off the edge here. But I thought I would just do something different for you guys. Nora Corrin case is strange, very posh. Okay. Robbie Robin says Maddie would have been 18 soon. Would they still look for her as an adult? You would think with today's technology, with facial recognition, that Facebook would have found Madeleine a long time ago. I mean, have there not been any photos of Madeleine posted to Facebook ever? I mean, of a surviving Madeleine kind of thing. So many people have asked me to do Delphi. It's okay, guys. Thank you for being here. I'm going to, I think, take my dog for a quick walk while the sun is still up, and then get some dinner. But well, all these comments coming through now. I believe that some of you are like coming off work now, just as I'm about to log off. Peter Schoenberg, I don't know if I fully answered your question. You know, how Amaral was kicked off the investigation and it was sort of politicized after that. I don't think it was very good. I don't think that part was good. I think there were 1 or 2 months that were fairly useful. certainly where the cadaver dogs were brought in and where they took notice of Kate McCann's dream, and so I think some of that was quite a lot of what Amaral says. I think is very interesting. So I don't know if that answers your question. I did actually ask Peter Schoenberg if he wanted to collaborate on a video, but something where we speak more specifically about, I guess, specifics. So we'll see if that ever happens. Peter Schoenberg in chat here, he's also written a really good book and been pretty well reviewed as well. Chef Betsy says, I don't feel a career or degree is a way to measure credibility. I'm known to my friends as a professional student. My morals don't change when I gain a certification. That's a nice sentiment, but I think it's I do think that a lot of people do in the same way that people want to feel that they can trust airlines or hotels or whatever, and so they want people to take vaccines and have certifications. I see a lot of YouTube channels where someone is a doctor or a lawyer or something, and then that immediately confers upon them. I think it's quite simple. What confers expertise is the amount of time you've spent on a particular case. And I can tell you now, I haven't thought about the Madeleine McCann case consistently for the last couple of weeks, and I think it kind of shows in a way. It's got to be kind of running in your veins in your daily head, and then you can tap into it, and there's a lot of expertise there. I think when you dip into things, you have a superficial understanding, and it's not really worth much. But I do think, if you think about creators like Dr. Todd Grande and Scott Reich, they've got a huge following. I think a lot of that is based on their assumed credibility. I studied at university for about 10 years. I actually should be a doctor based on my studies. But what do you think of that? A PhD, basically spending years studying one topic. Yeah, I mean, you need to be a specialist in an area, and you need to think in a certain way. Tomorrow says not really. Geordie girl, no one is above the law. That's true. So when did Madeleine fall, if she fell, and when did Madeleine possibly die? And if you think about it, I do think that Madeleine's death was accidental. So, and I think in a way it's quite similar to the JonBenet Ramsey case. I know there are a lot of people out there that either think there was a trafficker or an abductor or a pedophile or something, and then there are other people who think that the parents were part of some cabal or something, or that. But I personally believe that Madeleine was possibly playing on the balcony and she fell, and that's where it gets quite complicated, because if you say that she fell in an accident, then the question is, why would there be a need, if that is what happened, and if her body was hidden, then why was it necessary, if everything that happened was an accident? And that, I think, is a crucial question, and a crucial question to answer. And I think it leads to kind of a rabbit hole when you do go down that question and go through with those answers. Okay, guys, so I think that's it for me. On that note, I'm going to be out of here. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time from my regular spot with the Rocket Science logo behind me. So I'll see you guys next time. This doesn't always seem to work when you try a location like this. It just seems to lead to some difficulties, and I find I struggle to concentrate a little bit. I thought it might be good for you guys, but anyway, here is Timmy one last time. Timmy. And I'll see you guys next time. Okay, ciao.